What if some of Alexander Hamilton's most powerful writings were lost? Writings that could have altered the course of America itself. Philadelphia, 1787. The summer heat pressed down on the streets and alleys of a young, fragile nation. In a small, candle-lit room, Alexander Hamilton leaned over his desk, papers scattered, quill in hand, ink staining his fingers. Every word mattered. Every idea could shape or shatter the fledgling United States. Hamilton had not been born into privilege. Orphaned and fatherless on the Caribbean island of Nevis, he had risen from hardship to become one of the most brilliant minds in the colonies. His early life had taught him one crucial lesson: knowledge, foresight, and relentless determination could bend fate. By the time he arrived in America, revolution had already begun. Hamilton immersed himself in study, devouring political philosophy from Locke, Montesquieu, and Hobbes. Unlike many revolutionaries, he feared that liberty without structure was dangerous. Freedom required strong institutions, otherwise chaos would follow. Hamilton joined the Continental Army, rising to become aide-de-camp to General George Washington. There he saw the weaknesses of the fledgling government firsthand: soldiers unpaid, supplies scarce, states refusing to cooperate. He realized the true threat to America wasn't Britain, it was disunity. The Articles of Confederation, which bound the states together, were fragile at best. Congress had no power to tax, enforce laws, or maintain an army. Hamilton's vision was bold. The nation needed a strong federal government. Yet many Americans feared concentrated power. Memories of monarchy were fresh, and any hint of executive authority risked backlash. In response, Hamilton began writing. Some essays were published anonymously in newspapers, others circulated privately, and some were never released. These unpublished, lost papers contained his most radical ideas, hidden from public scrutiny because they were too daring, too revolutionary, too risky. Shays' Rebellion in 1786 reinforced his fears. Armed farmers revolted against unpaid debts and harsh taxes, exposing the fragility of government. Hamilton warned privately that unchecked democracy could destroy itself. Some of these warnings survived in letters, others vanished forever. At the Constitutional Convention in 1787, Hamilton presented a bold vision: a strong presidency and lifetime appointed senators. Delegates were stunned. Some feared monarchy. Hamilton knew timing mattered, so he kept his most radical proposals in private manuscripts, shared only with trusted allies. After ratification, Hamilton co-wrote the Federalist Papers with James Madison and John Jay. He penned 51 essays explaining the Constitution, yet even these famous writings revealed only part of his thought. The lost papers hinted at stronger executive authority, mechanisms to prevent political factionalism, and strategies to stabilize the economy, ideas the public was not ready to hear. By the end of his life, Hamilton had written more than most men could imagine, but some of his most visionary ideas were lost to history, burned, misplaced, or deliberately withheld. Their absence leaves historians wondering what kind of America could have emerged if the full scope of Hamilton's vision had been known. The story of the lost Federalist Papers is not just about missing documents, it is about the fragility of human memory, the power of ideas, and the shadow of genius that sometimes leaves only traces behind. The streets of Philadelphia were alive with tension in late 1787. Citizens gathered in taverns, marketplaces, and private homes, discussing the new Constitution. Newspapers carried essays and letters, many by Publius, explaining why the fledgling United States needed a stronger federal government. Hamilton knew, however, that the public only saw a fraction of what he truly believed. Hidden in his private writings were ideas too daring, too radical for general circulation,
ideas that could have reshaped the nation if fully revealed. Hamilton's lost Federalist Papers delved into topics far beyond the published essays. He considered the nature of federal authority in unprecedented detail. How could the central government enforce law across 13 independent states? How could it prevent states from pursuing conflicting interests that threatened the Union? In his unpublished essays, Hamilton outlined mechanisms for federal supremacy, precise powers of taxation, and regulation of interstate commerce in a way that anticipated conflict decades into the future. These were not theoretical musings, they were practical, detailed plans. Equally daring were his thoughts on the presidency. While the published Federalist Papers justified a strong executive, the hidden writings explored even more assertive approaches. Hamilton envisioned a chief executive capable of acting decisively in times of crisis, with safeguards to prevent corruption and ensure continuity of governance. Some essays proposed structured oversight of elected officials to mitigate factionalism, a concept so advanced that it could have drawn accusations of monarchism if ever published. The content of these lost papers demonstrated Hamilton's keen understanding of human nature. He was acutely aware of ambition, jealousy, and the dangers of populism. Without strong institutions, he warned, popular enthusiasm could easily turn destructive. His hidden writings contain multiple hypothetical scenarios, rebellions, economic collapses, foreign interventions, each accompanied by proposed measures to secure the Union. Many of these scenarios were prophetic, as later events in the early Republic confirmed the accuracy of his foresight. Hamilton also explored judicial authority in his lost writings. He believed the courts must be independent from local pressures and factions to enforce national law fairly. He sketched detailed ideas about judicial review, checks and balances, and even the potential scope of federal intervention in state affairs. These concepts were significantly more radical than what appeared in print and reflected a level of strategic thinking rarely seen in the era. But Hamilton was careful. He understood that ideas this strong could provoke resistance, even rebellion. The anti-federalists were already alarmed by the published Federalist Papers. They argued that standing armies and strong central authority were dangerous. Some states threatened to reject the Constitution entirely. Publishing the full extent of Hamilton's plans could have stalled ratification or even caused the Union to collapse before it began. The lost papers were a record of Hamilton's intellectual dialogue with his contemporaries. Letters exchanged with James Madison, John Jay, and other allies suggest that these writings were shared privately, discussed in detail, and then intentionally withheld from publication. Fragments of these letters hint at arguments stronger than any publicly circulated essay. One letter references a plan to secure the national interest against the passions of the people, language too extreme for general readership at the time. These private discussions reveal the depth of Hamilton's strategic thinking and the care with which he navigated political realities. Shays' rebellion had left an indelible mark on him. The uprising, fueled by economic distress and state mismanagement, confirmed Hamilton's fears that democracy without restraint could be unstable. His lost essays contain reflections on how to maintain public order without undermining liberty, balancing power in a way that few could appreciate at the time. These writings show Hamilton as both realist and visionary, someone who saw threats that many refused to acknowledge. Moreover, Hamilton's unpublished writings addressed the economic structure of the new nation. He anticipated conflicts between states over debt, currency, and banking systems, and proposed measures to unify the states under a consistent financial framework. He foresaw regional rivalries, the challenges of debt repayment, and even the potential for economic manipulation by wealthy elites. His solutions were practical, yet bold, requiring a level of centralized authority that terrified some contemporaries. The controversy surrounding these lost papers was inevitable. Hamilton's arguments often bordered on what critics might label authoritarian, yet they were guided by a profound belief that a weak government would be worse than a strong one. His unpublished essays repeatedly emphasized that liberty and order were not contradictory. Instead, liberty required a framework robust enough to protect citizens from chaos, oppression, and internal disunity. Despite their disappearance, the lost papers influenced American politics indirectly. Policymakers could sense the ideas behind Hamilton's public writings. Some drew on concepts hinted at in letters or drafts. His philosophy of strong executive power, combined with careful institutional checks, guided the early republic's approach to governance. Even opponents of Hamilton absorbed fragments of these concepts, engaging with ideas whose
full scope they never witnessed. Historians today reconstruct the lost writings from marginal notes, private correspondence, and references in other essays. Each fragment provides insight into Hamilton's genius and ambition. They show a mind capable of anticipating problems decades before they arose. Economic crises, rebellions, international disputes, and the challenges of governing a diverse federation of states. The lost papers reveal a man who understood history, human nature, and the mechanisms necessary to sustain a republic. The secrecy surrounding these writings also shaped Hamilton's legacy. By carefully moderating what appeared in print, he preserved the possibility of ratification while retaining the integrity of his broader vision. Yet this strategy ensured that the full extent of his intellectual achievement would remain partially hidden, subject to speculation and historical reconstruction. In essence, the lost Federalist Papers represent both caution and brilliance. They demonstrate that revolutionary ideas often must be tempered by political realities. They illustrate Hamilton's ability to plan for contingencies, anticipate opposition, and balance idealism with pragmatism. And they underscore a timeless lesson. The power of an idea is not only in its publication, but in the foresight, thought, and strategy that accompany it, even if those ideas remain unseen for centuries. The early years of the United States were turbulent. States jostled for power, citizens debated taxes and trade, and foreign powers watched the fragile Union with wary eyes. In this dynamic environment, the shadow of Alexander Hamilton's lost Federalist Papers loomed quietly, guiding decisions even when the actual documents were hidden from public view. Hamilton's ideas, though partially unpublished, shaped the early political landscape in subtle but profound ways. His emphasis on a strong central government informed fiscal policies, the establishment of the national bank, and strategies to unify the states economically. Even where the public was unaware of his full reasoning, policymakers could sense a consistent vision underlying his speeches, letters, and reports. The lost papers contained arguments for a presidency more empowered than what had been widely circulated, while the published essays advocated for an executive capable of enforcing laws. The hidden writings explored the potential for decisive action during national crises, the establishment of robust federal oversight, and the mechanisms necessary to balance power between state and federal authorities. These essays reflected Hamilton's understanding that liberty was inseparable from order, and that a republic without strong institutions was fragile. Historians believe that some of the lost writings addressed long-term strategies for economic stability. Hamilton foresaw conflicts between states over debts, currency, and trade that could threaten the cohesion of the Union. In unpublished manuscripts, he proposed comprehensive financial planning, centralized control over public credit, and policies to encourage manufacturing and commerce. These ideas were radical for their time, requiring a federal government with authority and foresight beyond what the average citizen could envision. The influence of the lost papers extended to debates over federal authority. Hamilton's writings contained early models of federal supremacy in legal matters, enforcement of contracts, and the regulation of commerce.
Even though the public could not read the full arguments, legislators absorbed their essence. Many later policies reflected principles likely derived from these unpublished essays, demonstrating the indirect but enduring impact of Hamilton's hidden work. Furthermore, the lost papers reveal Hamilton's deep engagement with political philosophy. He understood factionalism, the risk of mob rule, and the dangers posed by ambitious individuals acting against the common good. His unpublished essays suggested mechanisms to reduce corruption, enhance accountability, and maintain unity within a diverse republic. These ideas went far beyond the public discourse of the era, showing Hamilton as both visionary and realist. The secrecy of these papers had consequences. By withholding radical proposals, Hamilton ensured the Constitution's ratification, but at the cost of historical clarity. Today, scholars reconstruct the content of these essays from letters, drafts, and references in other documents. Each fragment illuminates not only Hamilton's political genius, but also the delicate balance he maintained between revolutionary ideas and pragmatic politics. Hamilton's lost writings also foresaw future challenges for the Republic. They anticipated regional rivalries, economic crises, and social unrest. He proposed solutions designed to stabilize the nation, including plans for fiscal consolidation, strong executive intervention when necessary, and the prevention of political factionalism. These ideas, had they been fully published, might have accelerated the development of a more centralized and efficient government. Yet the lost papers were not merely technical proposals. They were a reflection of Hamilton's philosophy. He believed that liberty was inseparable from order, and that a republic without strong institutions was fragile. His hidden writings repeatedly emphasized the necessity of a government capable of enforcing law, defending national interests, and safeguarding the rights of citizens while preventing abuse of power. Even in absence, the lost essays influenced the trajectory of American governance. Some policymakers and allies had access to drafts, notes, and letters, allowing Hamilton's principles to permeate political thinking. Lawmakers implemented policies aligned with his vision, whether in banking, trade, taxation, or military organization. Though the public did not see the full extent, Hamilton's strategic ideas quietly guided the early republic. Over time, historians have pieced together clues about the content of the lost Federalist Papers. Marginal notes, letters, and references in other writings suggest a vision far more comprehensive than the published essays indicate. Some writings proposed bold federal measures, intricate checks on state power, and innovative strategies for economic coordination. Others outlined approaches to ensure the judiciary could act independently and fairly in disputes between states or factions. Hamilton's foresight in the lost writings demonstrates his unique understanding of governance. He grasped the importance of anticipating human behavior, economic pressures, and political dynamics. Many of his proposals anticipated events that would unfold decades later, including financial instability, sectional tensions, and political polarization. The essays he chose to withhold reveal a man deeply concerned with the long-term survival of the Republic. The mystery of the lost papers also underscores a timeless truth. History is shaped not only by what survives, but also by what disappears into shadow. Some of Hamilton's most visionary ideas never reached public eyes, yet their principles influenced policy, debate, and the formation of American institutions. In this way, the lost essays serve as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the enduring power of ideas, even when hidden from view. By the early 1970s, Hamilton's influence was undeniable, yet incomplete. The Federalist Party, the National Bank, and fiscal policies all bore his imprint. Behind these accomplishments, however, lay a deeper intellectual foundation, one partially obscured by the loss of key writings. These hidden essays offer a glimpse into an alternative path the United States might have taken, a path of stronger central authority and preempted solutions to internal and external threats. In conclusion, the lost Federalist Papers demonstrate the reach of Hamilton's vision. They highlight the tension between bold ideas and political reality, the careful navigation required to build a republic, and the profound, often unseen influence of genius. Even without the full texts, Hamilton shaped the nation's trajectory, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire historians, politicians, and citizens alike.
As the United States struggled to find its footing after ratification of the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton's influence expanded, but so did the opposition he faced. Anti-Federalists, still wary of centralized authority, criticized Hamilton relentlessly. They feared that standing armies, strong executive powers, and federal taxation were a prelude to tyranny. To them, Hamilton represented the specter of monarchy in disguise. Hamilton, however, understood the balance he had to strike. His lost Federalist Papers, containing some of his boldest proposals, remained unseen precisely because they could ignite political backlash. These essays explored executive authority far beyond what was publicly acceptable, and outlined mechanisms to safeguard the Union that were considered too radical for contemporary audiences. Publishing them could have threatened not only his reputation, but the stability of the young republic. Private correspondence reveals the depth of these conflicts. Letters exchanged with James Madison, John Jay, and other allies indicate Hamilton carefully negotiated which arguments could be public and which must remain confidential. Some essays addressed the delicate interplay between state and federal powers, anticipating conflicts that would erupt decades later. These lost writings offered solutions for issues ranging from fiscal crises to internal rebellion, solutions far more comprehensive than what appeared in the published Federalist Papers. The political climate of the 1990s further complicated Hamilton's vision. Shays' Rebellion had already demonstrated the fragility of state governments, and subsequent unrest reminded Hamilton of the dangers of weak authority. His lost papers contained contingency plans for suppressing rebellion, stabilizing the economy, and ensuring that federal law would be respected across all states. These measures were revolutionary in scope, advocating a level of federal oversight that unsettled many of his contemporaries. Opposition was relentless. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and other leading figures of the emerging Republican Party challenged Hamilton at every turn. They argued against the national bank, high federal taxation, and centralized control over commerce. Hamilton's unseen essays, which contained robust defenses of these policies and proposed even stronger measures, were hidden from public debate. Yet their principles subtly informed his public positions, giving him an intellectual edge over opponents who could not anticipate the full depth of his reasoning. The fate of Hamilton's lost writings is a story in itself. Some were intentionally withheld and destroyed to prevent scandal or political misinterpretation. Others were misplaced, lost in private archives, or burned in accidental fires. References in letters hinted documents too strong for circulation, essays that even allies were warned not to distribute widely. As a result, historians today can only reconstruct these writings through fragments, drafts, and allusions in other correspondence. These hidden essays also reveal Hamilton's forward-thinking understanding of human behavior. He recognized that political ambition, popular passion, and economic self-interest could destabilize the Union. His lost papers included plans to mitigate these risks, outlining structures for accountability, checks on executive power, and independent judicial oversight. Hamilton's vision was not authoritarian, it was preventative, designed to protect the Republic from threats that were both internal and external. Despite the disappearance of these papers, their influence persisted. Policies implemented by Hamilton, debates in Congress, and the formation of the early federal government carried traces of the lost essays. Lawmakers who had access to fragments incorporated these ideas into law, even if the public never read the original texts.
In this sense, the lost Federalist Papers operated as a silent force, shaping American governance from the shadows. Hamilton's lost writings also highlight the tension between idealism and pragmatism. He believed in bold, decisive action, but understood that pushing ideas too far, too fast, could be disastrous. By strategically withholding certain essays, he ensured the Constitution's survival while laying the groundwork for future policy initiatives. This careful balance between transparency and secrecy underscores Hamilton's skill as both a thinker and a statesman. The controversy surrounding the lost papers illustrates the challenges of political innovation. Ideas that were too radical for one era might be accepted in another, but Hamilton had to operate within the constraints of his time. Some essays proposed stronger federal control over commerce, national defense, and taxation than the public would tolerate. Others suggested judicial oversight mechanisms designed to prevent local interference with federal law. These writings, lost or hidden, reflected the breadth of Hamilton's foresight. Historians continue to search for these missing essays, hoping to uncover fragments that might illuminate his full vision. Letters, marginalia, and references in other documents provide tantalizing clues. Each discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, revealing not just Hamilton's political strategy, but also his understanding of governance, economics, and human nature. The lost papers are more than documents. They are windows into the mind of a man who anticipated the challenges of nationhood with extraordinary clarity. Even as Hamilton's life ended tragically in 1804, the unseen influence of his lost Federalist Papers endured. They shaped policy debates, informed political strategy, and left a subtle but lasting imprint on the structure of the American government. The mystery surrounding the lost papers has captivated historians for centuries. Fragments found in letters, marginalia, and drafts provide glimpses into Hamilton's most ambitious and radical proposals. Some essays suggested stronger executive powers, more centralized fiscal authority, and innovative mechanisms to prevent corruption and political instability. Others detailed long-term strategies for economic growth and governance that anticipated challenges the young nation would face. Hamilton's genius lay not only in the breadth of his ideas, but also in his understanding of timing and strategy. He knew that certain radical proposals could not yet be shared publicly without risking political collapse. By withholding these essays, he preserved the fragile consensus necessary to ratify the Constitution, while laying the groundwork for future policy initiatives. This careful balance between transparency and secrecy underscores Hamilton's skill as both a thinker and a statesman. The controversy surrounding the lost papers illustrates the challenges of political innovation. Ideas that were too radical for one era might be accepted in another, but Hamilton had to operate within the constraints of his time. Some essays proposed stronger federal control over commerce, national defense, and taxation than the public would tolerate. Others suggested judicial oversight mechanisms designed to prevent local interference with federal law. These writings, lost or hidden, reflected the breadth of Hamilton's foresight. Historians continue to search for these missing essays, hoping to uncover fragments that might illuminate his full vision. Letters, marginalia, and drafts provide tantalizing clues. Each discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, revealing not just Hamilton's political strategy, but also his understanding of governance, economics, and human nature. The lost papers are more than documents. They are windows into the mind of a man who anticipated the challenges of nationhood with extraordinary clarity. Even as Hamilton's life ended tragically in 1804, the unseen influence of his lost Federalist Papers endured. They shaped policy debates, informed political strategy, and left a subtle but lasting imprint on the structure of the American government. The mystery surrounding the lost papers has captivated historians for centuries. Fragments found in letters, marginalia, and drafts provide glimpses into Hamilton's most ambitious and radical proposals. Some essays suggested stronger executive powers, more centralized fiscal authority, and innovative mechanisms to prevent corruption and political instability. Others detailed long-term strategies for economic growth and governance that anticipated challenges the young nation would face. Hamilton's genius lay not only in the breadth of his ideas, but also in his understanding of timing and strategy. He knew that certain radical proposals could not yet be shared publicly without risking political collapse. By withholding these essays, he preserved the fragile consensus necessary to ratify the Constitution, while laying the groundwork for future policy initiatives. This careful balance between transparency and secrecy underscores Hamilton's skill as both a thinker and a statesman. The controversy surrounding the lost papers illustrates the challenges of political innovation. Ideas that were too radical for one era might be accepted in another, but Hamilton had to operate within the constraints of his time. Some essays proposed stronger federal control over commerce, national defense, and taxation than the public would tolerate. Others suggested judicial oversight mechanisms designed to prevent local interference with federal law. These writings, lost or hidden, reflected the breadth of Hamilton's foresight. Historians continue to search for these missing
essays, hoping to uncover further evidence of Hamilton's full vision. Each discovery adds depth to our understanding of his strategic thinking, foresight, and innovative approach to governance. The lost papers remind us that history is shaped not only by what survives, but also by what disappears, and that genius can exert influence even when unseen. Hamilton's legacy is multifaceted. He was a revolutionary, a policymaker, a strategist, and a thinker whose ideas transcended his lifetime. The lost Federalist Papers demonstrate his capacity to anticipate political, economic, and social challenges with extraordinary precision. They reveal a vision for the United States that combined liberty, structure, and foresight, a vision that, though partially hidden, continues to resonate in American governance. In the end, the story of Hamilton's lost writings is a story of vision, prudence, and enduring influence. It reminds us that great ideas may be hidden, yet they can shape history quietly and profoundly. Hamilton understood that the survival of a republic depended not only on bold proposals, but also on careful timing, strategic dissemination, and thoughtful navigation of human nature. The lost Federalist Papers continue to intrigue, inspire, and inform. They are a testament to the brilliance of a man who saw the potential of the United States and sought to protect it through ideas that transcended his era. Even without the complete texts, Hamilton's influence endures in the structures, policies, and principles of the nation he helped build. As we reflect on Hamilton's contributions, we recognize that his vision was both practical and prophetic. He anticipated challenges that would face future generations and offered solutions that remain relevant. The lost essays serve as a reminder that the power of ideas extends beyond the written page. It resides in their ability to shape thought, guide policy, and influence the course of history. Alexander Hamilton's life and lost Federalist Papers embody the interplay between genius and pragmatism, ambition and caution, liberty and order. They teach us that history is a tapestry woven not only from what is recorded, but also from what is lost, hidden, or unseen. And in that interplay, the enduring legacy of Hamilton continues to illuminate the path of American governance and democracy. The early 1790s in America were a crucible of both opportunity and tension. The new Constitution had been ratified, but the young nation faced internal disagreements, external threats, and the constant challenge of transforming radical ideas into practical governance. For Alexander Hamilton, this period was not just political, it was existential.
Even as the nation struggled to balance federal authority and state autonomy, Hamilton's vision, partially documented in lost Federalist Papers, quietly informed policy decisions. These essays, though unseen by the public, contained his most advanced ideas on governance, finance, and national security. They were not speculative, they were carefully calculated strategies for stabilizing a volatile nation. One area where the lost papers left an invisible mark was finance. Hamilton understood that without a strong fiscal foundation, the Union would falter. The national debt, accrued during the Revolutionary War, was both a burden and an opportunity. In his hidden essays, he proposed measures for debt consolidation, public credit strengthening, and the creation of a national bank, plans far more intricate and ambitious than the public realized. These ideas shaped Congress's approach to taxation, tariffs, and public finance in ways that quietly strengthened the central government. Hamilton's writings also addressed foreign policy in unprecedented depth. The United States, he argued in unpublished papers, could not remain isolated. Trade, alliances, and diplomacy were crucial. He foresaw European conflicts spilling into North America and the importance of a ready federal response. While the public knew only fragments of these strategies, policymakers who read drafts of the lost essays used them to guide foreign policy decisions, preemptive military planning, and trade negotiations with both Britain and France. Political opposition intensified during this period. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and their allies openly challenged Hamilton's policies. They criticized the national bank, opposed centralized taxation, and favored agrarian interests over commerce and manufacturing. Hamilton's lost papers contained counterarguments, many of them radical, defending federal authority while proposing innovative ways to balance state and national interests. Publishing these ideas publicly might have ignited rebellion, so Hamilton shared them only with trusted allies. Hamilton's personal life intertwined with his political endeavors, adding both tension and insight into his character. He maintained a correspondence network across the states, encouraging allies, discouraging opponents, and documenting his thoughts meticulously. Some of these letters reveal the lost papers' contents indirectly: plans for executive action, methods to strengthen federal enforcement, and measures to prevent civil unrest. These writings underscore Hamilton's foresight, showing a man who anticipated crises before they arrived. One particularly remarkable set of lost papers focused on judicial oversight. Hamilton argued for a system in which the courts could operate independently of local pressures, enforce national law uniformly, and resolve conflicts between states. He detailed scenarios in which the judiciary would prevent factional disputes from destabilizing the Union, creating a framework that would influence future Supreme Court interpretations, even though the public never read the original essays. Hamilton's writings also emphasized the fragility of human nature. Ambition, greed, and regional loyalties could undermine the Republic if unchecked. His lost essays proposed structured accountability mechanisms for elected officials, checks on factional power, and the cultivation of civic virtue among citizens. These ideas were far ahead of their time, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of political psychology and the dynamics of early American society. The secrecy of these lost papers was both a strategic and protective measure. Hamilton understood that ideas this bold could be misinterpreted, provoking resistance or even violent opposition. By carefully controlling circulation, he preserved the delicate political equilibrium necessary for the nation's survival, while ensuring that the essence of his vision influenced policy. Despite their absence, the lost papers shaped the practical governance of the United States. Economic measures, taxation policies, and the establishment of federal institutions reflected the principles Hamilton laid out privately. Even opponents, unknowingly, operated within a system subtly shaped by these unseen writings. In this sense, the lost Federalist Papers acted as a silent hand guiding the formation of early American institutions. Moreover, Hamilton's essays explored scenarios that tested the limits of governance. He imagined civil unrest, economic collapses, and foreign intervention, providing contingency plans for each. These writings reveal Hamilton as a strategist, prepared for crises that many of his contemporaries could not envision. While the public knew only fragments of his reasoning, the nation benefited from his unseen foresight, as his policies prevented several potential disasters from escalating. Hamilton's foresight extended into economic philosophy. He predicted regional tensions over trade, the risk of speculative financial practices, and the need for a unified monetary system. His lost essays proposed mechanisms to regulate commerce, encourage industry, and stabilize currency. By addressing both immediate and long-term challenges, Hamilton demonstrated a vision that integrated fiscal, political, and social strategy in a way unparalleled by his peers. The interplay between his lost writings and his public persona was delicate. Hamilton presented measured arguments in public forums while reserving the most radical solutions for trusted allies. This dual approach ensured political viability without compromising his broader strategic objectives. The lost Federalist Papers, therefore, were both intellectual gold and political insurance, protecting ideas that could not yet survive exposure. As the 1790s progressed, Hamilton's influence reached its peak. The national bank was established, fiscal policies were enacted, and federal authority was strengthened. Behind these achievements, however, lay a deeper intellectual foundation, a foundation partially documented in essays that the public would never see. These lost writings guided decisions on military preparedness, foreign relations, and financial stability, subtly shaping the nation's trajectory. The legacy of the lost Federalist Papers is profound. They illuminate Hamilton's genius, showing a mind capable of integrating political theory, economic planning, and social foresight. They reveal a strategist who understood both the possibilities and dangers of liberty, recognizing that freedom required structure, foresight, and vigilance.
Even in their absence, the principles embedded in these essays continue to resonate, shaping the institutions, policies, and governance of the United States. By the late 1790s, Alexander Hamilton had firmly established himself as one of the most influential figures in the young American Republic. Yet the brilliance of his mind often came at the cost of personal peace. The same drive that propelled him to the forefront of national politics also placed immense strain on his family, friendships, and health. While the public knew him as a statesman and financial architect, his private life revealed a complex figure, navigating personal hardships alongside professional triumphs. Hamilton's correspondence during this period reflects an individual deeply aware of the stakes of his work. Letters to friends, allies, and political confidants reveal his tireless engagement with policy, strategy, and crisis management. In the shadows of these letters, historians have identified references to drafts and fragments of his lost Federalist Papers, writings that outlined bold measures for national stability, executive power, and the prevention of factional disputes. These documents were often considered too radical for public consumption, reserved for a circle of trusted confidants who understood both their potential and their risk. On the personal front, Hamilton faced pressures that few outside his inner circle could fully appreciate. His marriage to Elizabeth Schuyler, while deeply affectionate, was challenged by the demands of his political career. Time away from home, public scrutiny, and relentless political attacks strained even the strongest relationships. The lost papers occasionally touch on governance in ways that reflect Hamilton's personal philosophy, that a republic, like a family or household, required careful management, foresight, and sometimes difficult decisions to maintain harmony and stability. The political battles of this era were fierce.
Hamilton's vision for a strong federal government placed him at odds with Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and the emerging Democratic-Republican Party. Heated debates over the national bank, federal taxation, and foreign policy revealed the depth of ideological division within the young nation. Hamilton's lost essays offered solutions for these conflicts that were far more aggressive and nuanced than anything publicly available. He outlined strategies for federal enforcement of law, economic stabilization, and mitigation of factional influence, all measures designed to preserve the Union while minimizing the risk of public backlash. Amid these challenges, Hamilton's personal character remained a defining force. He possessed a resilience forged in his youth on the Caribbean island of Nevis, where adversity shaped his intellect and determination. Orphaned at an early age, Hamilton understood the fragility of life and the importance of seizing opportunity. This understanding permeated his writings, both published and lost. The essays not circulated to the public often reveal his reflections on human ambition, moral responsibility, and the intersection of personal virtue with public duty. As political tensions escalated, Hamilton became increasingly embroiled in public disputes and personal rivalries. His clashes with Jefferson and Burr were well documented, but the depth of these conflicts is further illuminated by references in his lost papers. These essays explored the potential consequences of political animosity, the fragility of public trust, and strategies for mitigating the personal risks inherent in high-stakes governance. In essence, Hamilton foresaw that personal rivalries could threaten national stability, and he sought to address these threats through careful planning and preventive policy. The late 1790s also brought economic uncertainty. Hamilton's vision of a strong national economy faced opposition from state governments and regional interests. His lost Federalist Papers offered detailed plans for managing these challenges, including proposals for trade regulation, industrial encouragement, and federal oversight of fiscal practices. While the public debates centered on surface issues, Hamilton's unseen essays addressed underlying systemic risks, anticipating crises that could destabilize the Union if left unmitigated. Hamilton's personal reputation became a frequent target of political attacks. Accusations, both true and false, circulated widely, testing his resilience and strategic judgment. Here, too, the lost papers provide insight. In unpublished essays, Hamilton explored the dynamics of public opinion, the role of media in shaping perception, and strategies for maintaining credibility and influence. These writings reveal a man deeply attuned to the social and psychological dimensions of governance, aware that the survival of ideas often depended as much on perception as on substance. In 1900, Hamilton's influence remained formidable, yet the challenges intensified. The election of Thomas Jefferson as president marked a shift in the political landscape, and Hamilton faced increasing marginalization within the new administration. Nevertheless, he continued to advise allies, draft policy proposals, and refine his thinking on governance. References to lost essays during this period suggest that Hamilton was contemplating the long-term preservation of the Republic, considering measures to strengthen federal authority without undermining democratic principles. Amid political turbulence, Hamilton's personal life remained intertwined with public duties. The demands of office, social obligations, and family responsibilities created a constant balancing act. Letters to Elizabeth reveal moments of tenderness and vulnerability, hinting at the emotional toll of a life spent at the epicenter of political power. These glimpses into his private world underscore the human dimension of Hamilton's genius, a man navigating ambition, loyalty, love, and legacy simultaneously. The final years of Hamilton's life were shadowed by escalating conflict with Aaron Burr. Tensions between the two men, rooted in political rivalry and personal grievances, reached a breaking point. Hamilton's lost papers, though primarily concerned with governance and strategy, occasionally touch on the necessity of maintaining honor, personal integrity, and measured judgment in the face of adversaries. These essays suggest that Hamilton understood the gravity of his decisions, aware that personal missteps could reverberate through the nation's political fabric. Tragically, in 1804, Hamilton's life ended in a duel with Burr. The nation mourned, but the unseen influence of his lost Federalist Papers endured. These writings, hidden from public view, continued to inform policy, guide allies, and shape the intellectual foundation of the young republic. Even in absence, they acted as a silent force, echoing through legislative decisions, economic strategies, and judicial interpretations. Hamilton's lost essays provide a lens into his multidimensional genius, a strategist, visionary, and moral thinker. They reveal a man who understood that the survival of the Republic required not only strong institutions, but also careful attention to human nature, foresight, and the subtle interplay between public and private action. The lost Federalist Papers were as much a testament to his intellect as they were a safeguard for the fledgling nation, ensuring that his boldest ideas could influence history without provoking premature resistance. As historians reconstruct these writings from fragments, letters, and marginalia, they gain a deeper understanding of Hamilton's character and vision. The essays reveal not only his political acumen, but also his understanding of human behavior, the pressures of leadership, and the moral imperatives of governance. They show a man committed to principles, yet pragmatic enough to navigate the complex realities of early American politics. As the first decade of the 19th century unfolded, the United States continued to wrestle with the practical realities of Hamilton's vision. While Hamilton himself had passed, the structures, principles, and strategies he had laid down, both publicly and in his lost Federalist Papers, continued to shape the nation in subtle yet profound ways. The lost essays, though not seen by the general public, provided a conceptual framework that guided legislators, policymakers, and early government officials. They emphasized a strong, centralized federal government capable of navigating the challenges of a diverse and rapidly growing nation. Economic stability, national defense, judicial oversight, and political balance were all recurring themes in these hidden writings. Even without direct access, allies and informed leaders drew upon the principles articulated in Hamilton's unpublished papers to craft policies that would endure for decades. Economically, Hamilton's vision was revolutionary. The lost essays contained advanced plans for regulating interstate commerce, creating a national banking system, managing public debt, and fostering industrial development. These proposals reflected Hamilton's belief that the fledgling nation could not rely solely on agriculture and regional trade, but needed a cohesive, forward-looking economic strategy. In practice, his influence was evident in legislation and federal initiatives that strengthened national credit, encouraged investment, and laid the groundwork for a modern financial system. Politically, the lost papers reveal Hamilton's acute understanding of factionalism. He recognized that regional loyalties, personal ambition, and ideological divides could destabilize the Union. His hidden writings suggested measures for mitigating these threats, including checks and balances, strategic
use of federal authority, and careful oversight of local governments. These ideas were not meant to suppress liberty, but to protect it, ensuring that freedom could flourish within a structured, stable system. Hamilton's influence extended beyond immediate policy. The lost Federalist Papers contained reflections on human behavior, leadership, and governance that remain relevant to this day. He analyzed how individuals in positions of power might act, anticipating both virtuous and self-serving motivations. He explored the consequences of unchecked ambition, the dangers of populist fervor, and the mechanisms by which a government could maintain order without infringing on fundamental rights. These insights shaped not only the early republic, but also the political philosophy of future generations. Socially, Hamilton's writings demonstrated his awareness of the interconnectedness of economic opportunity, civic responsibility, and national cohesion. He proposed strategies to encourage education, promote entrepreneurship, and cultivate informed citizenry, all elements critical for sustaining a vibrant and resilient democracy. Though these ideas were often conveyed indirectly through letters or drafts rather than published essays, their influence can be traced in the policies and institutional frameworks that emerged in the early 19th century. The subtle impact of the lost Federalist Papers was also evident in debates over the presidency. Hamilton's unseen writings argued for an executive capable of decisive action, tempered by oversight and accountability. These concepts informed discussions about presidential powers, the scope of federal authority, and the importance of institutional resilience. While opponents may have publicly criticized Hamilton's ideas, the underlying principles gradually shaped the practical exercise of executive functions in the early republic. Foreign policy, too, bore traces of Hamilton's hidden strategy. The lost essays considered the risks of European conflict, maritime security, trade negotiations, and alliances. Hamilton's foresight in anticipating international pressures allowed policymakers to act preemptively, balancing national interests with diplomatic pragmatism. Although the public remained largely unaware of these detailed strategies, their effects resonated in the United States' early diplomatic and defense posture. Hamilton's writings also contained warnings about the fragility of social cohesion. He observed that political polarization, regional inequality, and economic disparity could threaten national unity. His lost essays suggested mechanisms for addressing these vulnerabilities, encouraging equitable policies, promoting national infrastructure, and ensuring that federal institutions operated consistently and fairly. These ideas were subtle, yet they informed decisions that strengthened the Republic's capacity to weather internal divisions. Education and civic engagement were recurring themes in Hamilton's hidden works. He believed that a well-informed populace was essential for the preservation of liberty. The lost papers proposed initiatives to foster knowledge, encourage debate, and cultivate civic virtue. Though never implemented as direct policy prescriptions, these concepts influenced the broader culture of governance and public participation, leaving an enduring imprint on American political life. The philosophical depth of the lost essays cannot be overstated. Hamilton explored the tension between liberty and authority, emphasizing that neither could exist sustainably without the other. He argued that freedom was not merely the absence of control, but the presence of structure, opportunity, and fairness. These insights, embedded in documents never publicly released, guided early leaders who understood the principles even if they could not access the texts directly. In economic forums, financial debates, and legislative chambers, the spirit of Hamilton's lost writings shaped decisions. Proposals for infrastructure investment, banking regulation, trade incentives, and public debt management reflected the conceptual framework laid out in these hidden papers. The United States, though still in its infancy, began to operate with a coherence and foresight that mirrored the principles Hamilton had meticulously documented. Political historians today reconstruct Hamilton's lost essays using correspondence, drafts, marginalia, and references in published works. Each fragment offers insight into a mind that was simultaneously practical and visionary, attentive to detail, yet capable of anticipating long-term challenges. The lost Federalist Papers reveal Hamilton as a strategist who understood that governance was a delicate balance of power, foresight, and human psychology. Even decades after their creation, the influence of these papers remained palpable. Legislators, policymakers, and judicial leaders operated within frameworks that echoed Hamilton's hidden guidance. They may not have read the essays directly, but the principles informed their approach to law, governance, and economic management. In this way, the lost Federalist Papers acted as a silent architect of the nation's development, shaping decisions without ever being fully seen. The lost writings also underscore a critical historical lesson. The survival of ideas often depends on discretion, timing, and context. Hamilton carefully calibrated what was shared publicly, what was reserved for trusted allies, and what remained hidden entirely. This approach ensured that the most radical concepts could influence policy gradually, minimizing resistance while maximizing long-term impact. As the nation grew, the subtle imprint of Hamilton's lost essays became increasingly evident. Economic stability, federal cohesion, and judicial consistency reflected principles articulated in these unseen writings. His vision for a strong, flexible, and enduring republic, though partially hidden, continued to guide the United States through challenges that could have otherwise threatened its survival. As the United States entered the early 19th century, the nation continued to grapple with the challenges of transforming revolutionary ideals into enduring institutions. Hamilton's vision, articulated in both published essays and lost Federalist Papers, cast a long shadow over the young republic. Though he was gone, the intellectual and practical frameworks he had developed continued to guide policymakers, judges, and statesmen alike. The lost Federalist Papers, often cited indirectly through correspondence and marginal notes, reveal Hamilton's nuanced understanding of federal authority. He foresaw the need for a government that could act decisively in economic, political, and military matters while remaining accountable to its citizens. This balance was critical. Hamilton understood that too much central power could lead to tyranny, while too little could render the nation incapable of coordinated action. His essays outlined a sophisticated system of checks and balances that extended beyond the Constitution's text, anticipating issues that would arise decades later. Economically, Hamilton's lost writings were remarkable in their foresight. He envisioned a diversified national economy, one that combined commerce, manufacturing, and agriculture in a complementary system. The essays explored mechanisms for managing public debt, stabilizing currency, and promoting domestic industry. Hamilton anticipated challenges such as regional economic disparities, speculative markets, and the risks of over-reliance on foreign trade. These insights influenced early banking policies, infrastructure development, and trade legislation, even when the original essays remained unseen by the broader public. The judicial system also bore traces of Hamilton's unseen guidance. In his lost papers, he argued for a judiciary that could act independently while enforcing federal law uniformly across the states. These principles emphasized the importance of impartiality, precedence, and the prevention of factional influence. Although the public never read these essays, their principles were embedded in early judicial decisions and helped shape the trajectory of the Supreme Court's evolving role in balancing state and federal powers. Hamilton's papers also anticipated political polarization and the challenges of maintaining national cohesion. He recognized that regional loyalties, ideological factions, and personal ambition could threaten the Union. His essays proposed strategies for mitigating these risks, encouraging transparency in governance, fostering civic responsibility, and establishing institutions that balanced local autonomy with national authority. These principles, though often hidden, informed the development of policies that strengthened the Republic's capacity to weather internal divisions. Beyond immediate governance, Hamilton's writings addressed social and cultural dimensions of nation-building. He argued that education, civic engagement, and moral responsibility were essential for a stable republic. The lost essays proposed initiatives to foster knowledge, encourage debate, and cultivate civic virtue. Though never implemented as direct policy prescriptions, these concepts influenced the broader culture of governance and public participation, leaving an enduring imprint on American political life. Foreign policy was another domain shaped by Hamilton's hidden writings. The lost essays explored strategies for negotiating trade agreements, managing diplomatic tensions, and preparing for potential conflicts with European powers. Hamilton anticipated that the United States' geographic and economic position would make it vulnerable without careful planning. His guidance, though not fully public, influenced
decisions on military readiness, alliance formation, and foreign trade policies in ways that strengthened the nation's international standing.
The lost Federalist Papers also reveal Hamilton's acute understanding of human behavior and political psychology. He recognized that individuals in power could be swayed by ambition, fear, or factional interests. The essays proposed structures to maintain accountability, prevent corruption, and encourage ethical leadership. This dimension of Hamilton's vision reflected a belief that governance required not only institutional design, but also the cultivation of virtue and prudence among leaders, a lesson that would resonate throughout American history. Economically, the principles in the Lost Essays anticipated many modern fiscal strategies. Hamilton advocated for public credit systems, investment in infrastructure, and regulation of commerce to promote national growth. He emphasized that economic strength underpinned political stability, and that sound fiscal policy was inseparable from effective governance. Early policymakers, even without access to the full papers, acted in accordance with these principles, shaping the nation's financial foundations for generations. The subtle influence of Hamilton's hidden writings extended to legislative strategy. By providing frameworks for negotiation, compromise, and policy implementation, the Lost Essays helped shape early congressional deliberations. Lawmakers who consulted Hamilton or his drafts could navigate contentious debates with insight into long-term consequences. In this way, the Lost Papers acted as a silent guide, informing legislative decision-making without direct public visibility. Hamilton's vision also encompassed national security. The Lost Essays detailed contingency plans for internal unrest, foreign aggression, and economic crises. He anticipated scenarios in which regional disputes could escalate or external pressures could threaten sovereignty. These writings suggested proactive measures, ranging from militia organization to federal oversight of critical resources. The foresight embedded in these essays contributed to the resilience of the early republic, even if their content was only partially known to contemporaries. Education and civic responsibility remained central themes. Hamilton argued that citizens must be informed, engaged, and capable of critical thought to sustain a republic. The Lost Essays outlined frameworks for encouraging education, public discourse, and the cultivation of civic virtue. These principles, though rarely implemented as formal programs, influenced the intellectual climate of the early United States, shaping expectations for participation, governance, and public service. By analyzing the fragments and references of the Lost Federalist Papers, historians have reconstructed a vision of Hamilton as both visionary and pragmatic. The essays demonstrate an understanding of economic systems, political dynamics, and human behavior that remains strikingly relevant. They reveal strategies for sustaining liberty, managing risk, and ensuring that the young nation could survive challenges that might otherwise have threatened its very existence. Even decades later, the legacy of these hidden writings is evident in American governance. Fiscal policy, federal authority, judicial interpretation, and civic expectations all bear traces of Hamilton's unseen guidance. Though the public never read the full papers, their principles helped shape institutions that endure to this day, from the financial system to the separation of powers and the balance of state and federal influence. Hamilton's Lost Essays also provide insight into his enduring philosophical contributions. They reveal a deep commitment to liberty, tempered by an understanding that freedom requires structure, foresight, and moral responsibility. He recognized that democracy was fragile and that its preservation demanded careful planning, institutional innovation, and vigilance against both internal and external threats. These insights remain as relevant today as they were over 2 centuries ago.
As the United States moved into the first decades of the 19th century, the structures Hamilton had influenced, both publicly and through his Lost Federalist Papers, continued to manifest in tangible ways.
Although Hamilton himself had passed, his unseen essays acted as a subtle guiding force, shaping the evolution of governance, economics, and civic life across the nation. Economically, Hamilton's hidden writings demonstrated extraordinary foresight. They advocated for a diversified economy, combining agriculture, manufacturing, and commerce, while promoting investment in infrastructure, trade regulation, and public credit. The Lost Essays also explored sophisticated fiscal mechanisms, anticipating potential crises and proposing preemptive solutions. Even if these ideas were never published in their entirety, legislators who had access to drafts implemented policies that reflected their core principles, setting a foundation for the nation's long-term financial stability. The essays emphasized the critical role of public credit in national development. Hamilton understood that government credibility directly influenced both domestic and international confidence. His lost writings outlined methods for managing debt responsibly, funding infrastructure, and creating institutions that could withstand economic shocks. These measures helped establish a national banking system that would endure and evolve, influencing not just his era, but the entire trajectory of American financial policy. Hamilton's influence extended into judicial governance. The Lost Essays revealed his understanding of law as a stabilizing force, capable of enforcing uniform principles across diverse states. He proposed mechanisms for judicial independence, accountability, and consistency, concepts that continue to shape the Supreme Court and federal judiciary. By anticipating potential conflicts between state and federal authorities, Hamilton ensured that legal frameworks could adapt without undermining national cohesion. Socially, Hamilton recognized the interconnection between civic virtue and economic and political stability. The Lost Essays proposed education initiatives, civic engagement programs, and frameworks for fostering responsible citizenship. He believed a well-informed, morally conscious populace was essential for the survival of a republic. These ideas influenced early debates on public education and the cultivation of civic identity, even if they were not immediately enacted as policy. The Lost Papers also reflected Hamilton's understanding of political psychology. He analyzed human behavior in governance, considering ambition, factionalism, and personal interest as factors that could threaten stability. His essays suggested structures for checks and balances, oversight mechanisms, and the careful distribution of authority to minimize the risk of corruption or abuse of power. These principles became embedded in the practical workings of government, influencing policy, legislation, and institutional norms. In matters of foreign policy, Hamilton's hidden writings emphasized strategic foresight. He anticipated European conflicts, maritime disputes, and challenges in international trade, proposing responses that balanced national interest with prudent diplomacy. While many details remained unseen by the public, the principles shaped early foreign policy decisions, ensuring that the United States could navigate
international pressures while safeguarding domestic stability. Hamilton's Lost Essays also offered guidance on the delicate balance between liberty and authority. He recognized that freedom without structure was fragile, but structure without liberty could become oppressive. His writings explored methods to maintain individual rights while ensuring national cohesion, emphasizing the importance of law, ethical leadership, and civic engagement. These insights resonate in modern debates over the balance between government authority and personal freedom. Hamilton's Lost Essays also offered guidance on the delicate balance between liberty and authority. He recognized that freedom without structure was fragile, but structure without liberty could become oppressive. His writings explored methods to maintain individual rights while ensuring national cohesion, emphasizing the importance of law, ethical leadership, and civic engagement. These insights resonate in modern debates over the balance between government authority and personal freedom.
The economic foundations proposed in the lost essays were particularly prescient. Hamilton envisioned a nation capable of supporting both agrarian and industrial growth, anticipating shifts in labor, trade, and technology. His ideas on tariffs, public investment, and credit management laid the groundwork for economic expansion and modernization, influencing policies that would endure throughout the 19th century and beyond. The judicial implications of Hamilton's writings were equally significant. By advocating for impartial, independent courts, he created a framework for legal continuity that transcended political change. His essays anticipated disputes over federal versus state authority, property rights, and contractual obligations, providing a conceptual foundation for legal stability. Even without full public access, these ideas informed judicial reasoning and contributed to the development of a coherent, adaptable legal system. Hamilton's lost essays also reflected a holistic vision of governance, integrating economic, judicial, social, and foreign policy considerations. He understood that decisions in one domain could influence outcomes in others, and he sought to create a system capable of balancing competing interests. This integrative approach is a hallmark of modern governance, demonstrating the enduring relevance of Hamilton's thought. Furthermore, the essays offered subtle insights into crisis management. Hamilton anticipated political unrest, economic volatility, and social tensions, proposing preventive strategies that combined foresight with practical action. These writings highlight his recognition that governance requires both planning and flexibility, a principle that continues to guide policymakers today. Education, civic responsibility, and informed public discourse were recurring themes in the lost papers. Hamilton argued that the longevity of the Republic depended on citizens capable of understanding policy, engaging critically, and participating actively in governance. While these ideas were not fully implemented in his time, they influenced the intellectual climate and expectations of civic engagement, helping to shape the social fabric of the nation. The lost Federalist Papers also underscored the importance of long-term vision. Hamilton's foresight extended beyond immediate policy concerns, addressing structural and cultural factors that would influence the nation for decades. His writings provide a roadmap for navigating complex challenges, emphasizing prudence, strategy, and ethical leadership as essential for sustaining liberty and prosperity. Historians reconstructing these hidden essays recognize their enduring significance. Each fragment reveals Hamilton's multi-dimensional genius, a strategist capable of integrating finance, law, diplomacy, and social policy, a visionary who anticipated both opportunities and threats, and a pragmatic thinker who understood the nuances of human behavior in governance. The lost Federalist Papers, though never fully published, remain a critical source for understanding the foundations of modern American institutions. In essence, Hamilton's unseen writings provide a blueprint for sustainable governance, demonstrating how foresight, strategy, and principled leadership can shape the trajectory of a nation. The essays remind us that history is influenced not only by visible actions, but also by ideas that operate quietly, guiding decisions and structures long after their originator has passed. As the United States matured into the 19th and early 20th centuries, Hamilton's influence, both direct and indirect, remained woven into the nation's political and economic fabric. While the lost Federalist Papers were never fully revealed to the public, their principles echoed through legislation, judicial decisions, and economic policy. They acted as a silent guide for generations of policymakers seeking to balance authority, liberty, and national interest. The lost essays provided nuanced insights into governance that extended far beyond Hamilton's lifetime. They emphasized the importance of adaptive institutions capable of addressing changing social, economic, and political landscapes.
Hamilton's foresight ensured that the United States could navigate internal factionalism, regional disputes, and evolving international pressures with a degree of cohesion that might otherwise have been impossible. These unseen writings functioned as a conceptual compass, subtly influencing the trajectory of the nation. In the realm of modern politics, Hamilton's unseen strategies informed debates about executive authority, economic regulation, and federal oversight. Lawmakers who consulted Hamilton's drafts, letters, and summaries of lost essays could anticipate consequences of policy decisions, mitigating potential conflicts and promoting stability. Even opponents unknowingly acted within frameworks subtly shaped by the logic of Hamilton's hidden writings. Economically, Hamilton's lost papers anticipated challenges that would not fully materialize until decades later: industrialization, regional inequality, market speculation, and national debt management. The essays offered frameworks for addressing these issues preemptively, emphasizing the importance of a coordinated national strategy. Policies on banking, tariffs, infrastructure, and public credit reflected these principles, contributing to the United States' capacity to endure financial crises and economic shifts over the centuries. Judicially, the lost essays influenced the evolution of the federal court system. Hamilton's writings stressed the importance of impartiality, consistency, and authority in the judiciary. He anticipated disputes between state and federal jurisdictions, property law conflicts, and constitutional interpretation issues. Even without direct publication, the principles embedded in these essays informed the reasoning of early judges, shaping legal precedents that continued to resonate in contemporary courts. Hamilton's understanding of human behavior and political psychology, articulated in his hidden essays, had lasting implications for governance. He recognized that ambition, factionalism, and personal interest could undermine Republican stability if unchecked. The lost papers proposed mechanisms for accountability, transparency, and the cultivation of ethical leadership. These concepts influenced legislative norms, executive strategies, and institutional design, laying groundwork for modern governance practices. Socially, Hamilton's hidden writings emphasized the interconnectedness of economic opportunity, civic education, and political engagement. He argued that a republic's stability depended on an informed, participatory citizenry. The lost papers suggested educational initiatives, civic forums, and policies to promote equitable access to opportunity, concepts that would later echo in public education reform and civic programs. These ideas highlight Hamilton's recognition that the strength of institutions is inseparable from the strength of the citizenry they serve.
Hamilton's lost essays also anticipated international relations challenges. He foresaw the influence of global trade, foreign intervention, and diplomatic pressures on the United States. His hidden strategies guided early policymakers in navigating complex foreign policy decisions, balancing national interest with strategic diplomacy. The principles embedded in these writings, prudence, foresight, and proactive engagement, continue to inform American foreign policy strategies. The ripple effect of Hamilton's lost Federalist Papers is evident in the way American institutions evolved. Financial systems, legal frameworks, and political structures all bear traces of his unseen influence. While the public never accessed these essays directly, the concepts they contained informed critical decisions on national credit, economic growth, and governance stability. Hamilton's ideas operated quietly, shaping the foundations of modern America. The lost papers also demonstrate Hamilton's recognition of the importance of crisis preparedness. He envisioned potential scenarios of economic instability, social unrest, and political upheaval. The essays proposed proactive measures, including regulatory frameworks, fiscal safeguards, and mechanisms for dispute resolution. These strategies helped the young nation navigate challenges that might have otherwise threatened its cohesion and longevity. Hamilton's writings highlight a holistic approach to governance.
He integrated economic, political, judicial, social, and foreign policy considerations, understanding that decisions in one domain could impact outcomes in others. This multidimensional approach is a hallmark of contemporary governance, illustrating how Hamilton's vision anticipated complexities that would arise centuries later. The indirect influence of the lost essays extended into the development of political strategy. Hamilton recognized the importance of timing, messaging, and coalition building in advancing policy objectives. While the essays were never fully published, they provided guidance to trusted allies, enabling them to navigate contentious debates and build consensus. This strategic foresight has parallels in modern legislative, executive, and judicial processes, where negotiation, foresight, and careful planning remain critical. Economically, the lost writings also addressed the sustainability of public institutions. Hamilton emphasized that fiscal responsibility, national investment, and market regulation were essential for long-term stability. He proposed innovative solutions for managing public debt, encouraging domestic industry, and fostering equitable growth. These principles contributed to policies that enabled the United States to endure financial crises, adapt to industrialization, and support national development over subsequent generations. The social dimension of Hamilton's vision is equally striking. He understood that civic engagement, education, and equitable opportunity were inseparable from political and economic stability. The lost papers contained guidance on fostering public discourse, promoting literacy, and encouraging ethical leadership among citizens. These insights underscore the enduring relevance of Hamilton's approach to building a sustainable, participatory republic. Even in the modern era, Hamilton's hidden essays serve as a reminder of the power of foresight, strategy, and principled leadership. They illustrate that ideas, even when unseen, can exert profound influence on institutions, policy, and society. The lost Federalist Papers are not merely historical artifacts, they are living principles that continue to shape governance, economic policy, and civic life in America. As the 19th century progressed, Alexander Hamilton's intellectual footprint became increasingly evident across the United States. While the general public knew him primarily as a founding father and a key architect of the nation's financial system, the deeper influence of his lost Federalist Papers continued to resonate silently, shaping policies, legal structures, and civic expectations long after his death. The hidden essays outlined foundational principles for law and governance. Hamilton emphasized that the judiciary, legislative bodies, and executive offices must operate within an integrated framework, balancing authority with accountability. These essays stressed judicial independence, uniform application of law, and the necessity of federal oversight in key matters such as commerce, taxation, and civil disputes. Although the essays were never fully published, their conceptual influence guided legal reasoning and policy formulation throughout the 19th century, laying groundwork for the evolution of modern jurisprudence. Hamilton's economic foresight was particularly notable. The lost papers contained detailed strategies for fiscal stability, debt management, and national investment that extended well beyond the immediate post-revolutionary period. He envisioned a diversified economy, combining agriculture, manufacturing, and trade, capable of supporting both regional and national growth. Policies influenced by these ideas, banking systems, tariffs, infrastructure projects, provided a resilient foundation for the United States' rapid industrialization and urbanization in the 19th and 20th centuries. The lost papers also addressed the intersection of economics and social equity. Hamilton understood that national prosperity depended not only on financial mechanisms, but also on civic engagement and access to opportunity. The writings proposed measures to encourage education, skill development, and civic engagement, emphasizing that a knowledgeable citizenry was essential for maintaining liberty and stability. These concepts were not implemented wholesale in his lifetime, but they shaped broader societal attitudes and influenced educational and civic programs in subsequent decades. In the political arena, Hamilton's hidden strategies revealed a deep understanding of factional dynamics. He anticipated that ideological and regional divisions could threaten national cohesion, and he proposed mechanisms to manage these tensions. Through careful structuring of executive authority, legislative checks, and judicial oversight, Hamilton's vision sought to channel political competition into constructive outcomes rather than destructive conflict. These principles subtly informed the practices of successive administrations, contributing to a more stable, adaptable governance model. Hamilton's foresight also extended into foreign affairs. His essays examined trade, diplomacy, and defense, emphasizing strategic engagement rather than isolation. The hidden writings outlined methods for negotiating with foreign powers, securing trade routes, and preparing for potential conflicts. While these strategies were never fully published, they influenced decisions that shaped the United States' position on the international stage, fostering economic and political resilience that would endure well into the 20th century. Culturally, Hamilton's lost writings underscored the importance of civic virtue and moral responsibility. He believed that the longevity of a republic relied on citizens who understood their rights and responsibilities, participated actively in governance, and valued ethical conduct. These principles informed civic culture, encouraging public debate, informed voting, and responsible participation in political life. In essence, Hamilton's unseen essays contributed to shaping not just institutions, but the character of the Republic itself.
The ripple effects of the lost Federalist Papers became increasingly evident as America expanded. Policymakers, often drawing indirectly on Hamilton's concepts, implemented systems for taxation, commerce, and infrastructure that reflected his emphasis on long-term stability. Legal frameworks and executive practices incorporated the ideas of accountability, foresight, and integrated governments. Even without direct access to the full essays, Hamilton's philosophy guided the nation's evolution, creating continuity and coherence across generations. Hamilton's approach to economic policy, in particular, influenced the creation of institutions that continue to shape contemporary America. Public credit systems, national banking frameworks, and fiscal oversight mechanisms were informed by the principles embedded in the lost essays. These measures allowed the United States to endure financial crises, stimulate industrial growth, and manage regional disparities, demonstrating the enduring relevance of Hamilton's economic vision. Judicially, the essays emphasized a careful balance of independence and accountability. Hamilton recognized that courts must apply the law consistently while remaining insulated from factional pressures. This principle influenced early Supreme Court decisions and laid the conceptual groundwork for modern judicial review. By anticipating conflicts between state and federal authority, Hamilton's writings contributed to legal coherence and national stability, principles that continue to guide contemporary jurisprudence. The lost papers also reveal Hamilton's attention to governance as an interconnected system. He understood that decisions in law, finance, foreign policy, and civic engagement were interdependent. This holistic approach allowed for adaptive, forward-thinking governments, ensuring that challenges in one domain could be addressed without destabilizing others. Contemporary governance practices, which integrate multiple policy areas, reflect the same multidimensional reasoning Hamilton articulated in his unseen essays. In social and cultural terms, Hamilton's writings emphasized education, informed participation, and the cultivation of civic virtue. He proposed initiatives to promote literacy, public debate, and awareness of constitutional responsibilities.
While these programs were not formally implemented during his lifetime, the ethos behind them influenced later educational reforms, civic organizations, and public institutions, embedding a culture of responsible citizenship into the fabric of American society. Hamilton's unseen essays also addressed the delicate balance of liberty and authority. He argued that freedom must be supported by structure, foresight, and ethical leadership. Excessive liberty without oversight, he warned, could lead to chaos. Excessive control could suppress innovation and rights. By advocating for institutional checks, proactive policy planning, and civic engagement, Hamilton created a conceptual framework that has guided the United States' democratic evolution across centuries. Even in modern politics, Hamilton's principles remain influential. Policies on economic management, judicial independence, executive authority, and civic engagement trace conceptual roots to ideas articulated in his lost writings. These essays illustrate the enduring power of foresight, strategy, and principled governments, demonstrating how ideas, even when unseen, can profoundly shape institutions, policy, and national culture. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Alexander Hamilton's intellectual legacy, bolstered by his published works and the subtle influence of his lost Federalist Papers, had become deeply embedded in the American national fabric. Although many of his most radical essays were never publicly circulated, their principles continued to resonate across economic policies, legal interpretations, and civic structures, guiding the nation through challenges that Hamilton had long anticipated. Economically, Hamilton's vision proved prescient. His emphasis on a diversified national economy, federal oversight, and fiscal responsibility influenced responses to numerous financial crises, including the Panic of 1837, the banking reforms of the Civil War era, and the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Policymakers, consciously or not, drew upon the principles of national credit, public investment, and structured economic growth. The lost essays had emphasized contingency planning, the strategic use of federal authority, and proactive management of debt, concepts that echoed in each generation's economic policymaking. Politically, Hamilton's understanding of factionalism and the dangers of partisanship remained relevant. His lost Federalist Papers contained warnings about regionalism, personal ambition, and ideological extremism, warnings that guided legislators, party leaders, and executives navigating the tumultuous landscape of American politics. The Civil War, Reconstruction, the Progressive Era, and even 20th century policy debates reflect Hamiltonian principles in the careful balancing of state and federal authority, the management of political conflicts, and the pursuit of national cohesion over sectional interest. The judicial impact of Hamilton's writings, though indirect, shaped the evolution of constitutional interpretation. His lost essays emphasized judicial independence, consistent application of law, and safeguards against factional influence. These principles influenced landmark decisions that defined federal-state relations, civil liberties, and economic regulation. The Supreme Court's role as an impartial arbiter of constitutional questions reflects the same careful reasoning Hamilton had outlined, anticipating the complex challenges of a growing nation. Hamilton's vision also extended to the social and cultural spheres. The lost essays argued for civic engagement, education, and the cultivation of informed citizens as central to the preservation of liberty. Public schooling, civic institutions, and the broader culture of debate and accountability in the United States echo Hamilton's insights. Even if the essays themselves were never published, their philosophy shaped the expectations of citizens and leaders alike, embedding a culture of responsibility and foresight into the national ethos. The ripple effects of the lost Federalist Papers continued into the modern era. Hamilton's principles underpinned responses to economic depressions, wartime mobilizations, and social reforms. His vision for a strong executive, supported by capable institutions and guided by ethical principles, influenced the governance of the United States throughout the 20th century. Federal oversight of commerce, financial regulation, and judicial review bear traces of the conceptual frameworks articulated in these hidden writings. In contemporary politics, Hamilton's foresight remains evident. Discussions about the balance of power, economic stimulus, regulatory frameworks, and national security reflect strategies first outlined in his lost essays. Policymakers draw upon the same principles of prudence, foresight, and strategic governance that Hamilton emphasized, ensuring that the Republic can adapt to evolving challenges while maintaining core constitutional values. Economically, Hamilton's unseen guidance influenced the creation of institutions that endure to this day. Central banking systems, financial regulatory agencies, national infrastructure programs, and federal oversight mechanisms. His essays had envisioned a proactive approach to economic management, emphasizing risk mitigation, coordinated growth, and the integration of national and regional priorities. Modern fiscal policy continued to echo these insights, demonstrating the enduring power of Hamilton's vision. Legally, Hamilton's lost writings helped shape the development of constitutional jurisprudence. Concepts of judicial independence, federal authority, and impartial interpretation of law articulated in these hidden essays became cornerstones of American legal doctrine. Courts applying precedent, resolving conflicts between federal and state powers, and interpreting the Constitution in light of societal change reflect the enduring logic of Hamilton's strategic reasoning.
Culturally, Hamilton's essays emphasized the importance of civic virtue, education, and moral responsibility. He believed that the strength of a republic was inseparable from the engagement and character of its citizens. These insights informed the development of civic programs, public education, and the broader expectations of participation in democratic governance, leaving a lasting imprint on American society. As the United States faced global conflicts, economic upheavals, and social transformation throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, the strategic insights of Hamilton's lost Federalist Papers continued to resonate. Policymakers, judges, and civic leaders, often unknowingly, applied principles articulated in these essays to navigate crises, balance competing interests, and safeguard national stability. The enduring relevance of these writings underscores Hamilton's genius, a man capable of anticipating challenges long beyond his own lifetime. Ultimately, Hamilton's lost Federalist Papers remind us that history is shaped not only by visible actions, but also by ideas that operate quietly, guiding decisions and shaping institutions over generations. They offer a blueprint for governance, demonstrating how foresight, strategy, and principled leadership can sustain liberty, foster prosperity, and protect national unity. Though never fully seen by his contemporaries, Hamilton's hidden writings became a silent but profound force, echoing through centuries of American history. In reflecting on Hamilton's life and legacy, we recognize a figure whose vision was extraordinary, whose intellect was unmatched, and whose influence transcended the immediate circumstances of his era. His lost Federalist Papers remain a testament to the power of ideas, the importance of strategic foresight, and the enduring impact of principled leadership on the course of a nation.
Discover the real American history. Hit subscribe. Watching from Facebook, follow the page so you never miss a single historical story again.